Welcome back to Irish Illustrated Insider. I'm Tim O'Malley, joined today by Tim Priester of Irish Illustrated, John Bryce of Football Scoop. Notre Dame is still not in a playoff or a bowl game, but they do continue to talk about it, and we're going to start there with what I guess would be a strenuous objection, as we joked about on Monday. JB, I'm going to throw it to you first, and then we'll go to Tim Priester on the same topic. There was a press conference called for the full media, and I'll get to that in a second. And Pete Bavacqua talked or took questions. In fairness, he took questions. It's not like he just started speaking, but he took questions, and all of the questions revolved around the playoff snub and the bowl decision.
Yeah, it did, and it was billed as Pete's annual end of the year presser. He did do the similar press conference last year. It also coincided with Marcus's new contract extension. Like was within maybe 24 to 48 hours of that Sunday night football announcement that Marcus and Notre Dame had agreed to a new long-term extension that pushed him back out to the full 6-year term. It's certainly been debated and will continue to be debated as to the effectiveness of that. I do think that Pete Bavacqua wanted to get up there and he'd made some national media rounds, so to speak, but I think he wanted to stand in the trench and let Irish Nation know that he was ticked off. He was really furious. I had somebody tell me within the last week that we would be stunned to know, and maybe we wouldn't, but we'd be stunned to know how closely he follows recruiting in Notre Dame football, particularly, but in multiple sports. He obviously routinely meets with the Notre Dame recruits when they're on campus. So he is incredibly invested in Notre Dame football. I would contend more so than most athletics directors around the country. That can be great, and that can be not so great. I thought, honestly, as much as I think we're all tired of talking about the playoff snub, I would contend that, and I understand why he did it, but I would contend that the biggest misstep Pete Bavacqua made on Monday was the fact that he went full George Costanza and said he has no hand with Marcus Freeman. He just said, we'll negotiate, we'll offer him anything. There's nothing we won't match. We'll fly him to the moon. And so I know he was sending a message that Notre Dame wouldn't be outbid for Marcus Freeman's services at any point in time. But Pete's also a former high-level executive at CAA, and he's negotiated contracts at NBC Sports, incredibly huge contracts, high leverage contracts. And he literally just said, I have no hand. So that to me was maybe most noteworthy of all. I think Notre Dame fans were certainly heartened to hear Pete Bavacqua say that he views it as a living, breathing entity and that it'll be revisited every year. And I thought that that was smart, but it could have ended right there.
Yeah, I think there's two conversations here, Tim. One was the Monday interview that Bavacqua did with Dan Patrick. I thought that played well.
Yeah.
I'm gonna save my comments on the press conference that came the next day for a question in the second segment. But yeah, I thought that played well. I don't understand the airing of the dirty laundry with the ACC, but that's more now in retrospect, me looking back at it. But I'm also not the vice president and director of athletics at Notre Dame either. So, my decisions don't really matter compared to his. But I think it would have taken a little bit of foresight on Notre Dame's part to view that Tuesday press conference a little bit differently. I'll talk more about that again in the second segment. But I thought, I thought what he said with Dan Patrick was good. It cleared the air. Even bringing up the ACC at that point. I mean, it was pretty much one hit and out. The strained relationship and what have you. I thought that played well. It didn't last. It didn't stand the test of time, though, as we got deeper into the week.
I wonder though, Tim, if it would have stood the test of time if it wasn't reiterated Tuesday. I think I agree with, and I think you feel that way too. I'm not
No, I
putting,
do. Yeah.
okay, yeah. I feel like that the Dan Patrick show, and we actually got time to talk about that on our Monday podcast. This is how much this has been in the news. It was right before our Monday podcast. We all watched it and talked about it. I thought that was a really good idea. I thought when I saw the original announcement, and yes, Bryce brought this up, to be fair, we all jumped to the conclusion at the beginning of it because we were kind of tipped off that the thing was coming in a smaller group. And it was like, oh, this is going to be something about Marcus's extension, and he's going to take
Mhm.
questions about. So it was going to have a major purpose, Marcus's extension, and he gets a chance to talk about the playoff snub. And then I did read back. It said this is the annual meeting with Pete Bavacqua to talk about all of Notre Dame sports. I did not really read that the first time because it was
because it's not going to. It wasn't. That was never.
it wasn't
going
going
to
to happen.
happen.
Yeah, I felt badly. There were no other questions about Notre Dame sports, so there wasn't going to be one. But shame on me for jumping to that conclusion. But I thought it was just too. It was an unnecessary add-on because it made everybody look. You're not in. It's not changing that you're not in. You've said that you're not in. It's over that you're not in. And maybe there's a high road to take at some point because you can't change it. If the campaigning at the end of it was just there was nothing you could do. You gotta explain. The Dan Patrick thing was totally fine for me. You have to explain you're dissatisfied with what the ACC did over that time. I have no problem with that. I think I thought Tuesday would be a different topic, or there would be one like Eric Hansen asked the first question, and it was the correct first question. But then I think there was 30 more minutes of it.
Yeah. And again, now to his credit, Pete stood in there and took a ton of questions. I
Yeah.
lost count, but I think it was around 24 questions, and maybe I'm wrong. But it was really close to that number. I mean, that's a lot of questions on that topic. I also think Notre Dame leaking the MOU component, that has not helped Notre Dame any whatsoever this week. People are furious about that, absolutely furious, and all it does is make Notre Dame kind of look like it's still trying to curry special favor or have different guardrails for the CFP than literally any other program in the country. And then the other thing that's pointed out to me by multiple people on campus, not in athletics but in significant positions, has been that we have to remember, quote, we created this. It was Jack in the SEC. We created this. And I do think that's significant. And I think that, in fact, I know that before he departed, Brian Kelly had expressed concern about Notre Dame with the 10-2 schedule and the faltering ACC would be in a precarious position. I know that for a fact. So this is the first time that it's bitten Notre Dame. This is not the first time that it's been discussed that I point out that the Notre Dame played 10 power conference teams plus a CFP team from last year plus Navy. They're the only team up there other than Tulane that did not play an FCS opponent this year. But there's not been any talk of that. And I'll reiterate, it's not Notre Dame's fault that Stanford is rebuilding and has been a mess on and off the field. And it's not Notre Dame's fault that Purdue has done the same. And it's not going to be Notre Dame's fault next year when Michigan State comes in with a first-year coach. And I think Pat Fitzgerald will have that a very tough program sooner rather than later. But that stuff wasn't talked about enough. Instead, they leaked MOU stuff that I think was a really poor decision. I think the MOU leak maybe is more damaging than anything else. And now the more we see it being picked up on around various national outlets, that seems to be the case.
I said that Monday, JB, that I'm surprised that nobody's jumped on Jack Swarbrick yet, because the reason that Tulane and James Madison are in the playoffs this year is because he and the group that he was involved with signed off on that adjustment. If there were, I think they had the ACC in mind with Virginia and Duke playing. So,
well, and again, the
not
schedule,
great.
Right, and then the tougher components of the schedule being your first two games, and then also ending your season on the road. And I looked that up, and Alabama opened its season on the road and closed its season on the road. There's nobody else up there. And Notre Dame now has done that 5 consecutive years. I just think that needs to be revisited.
I agree. I agree. I mean, it's fair. It's the only fair thing to Marcus Freeman, for crying out loud.
Oh,
and
that's
maybe
my point.
Yeah.
You guys were sitting in there in August when I jokingly asked Marcus if he'd done something to piss off Peter. Because of the way the schedule is done. And then you have to add in the fact that for the 5th consecutive year, or 6th consecutive year, I guess, Notre Dame had a different opening day starting quarterback. And you've done all that.
And in 2 years, they're going to have another one. CJ Carr's good. They have it for the right reason this time, John Bryce. There you go. When your quarterback leaves because he's too good to stay, that's when you want him to leave.
You can say that, like the criteria needed to stay independent and be able to schedule. Well, that doesn't just mean the teams you can schedule. It also means, and it's difficult because you're not in a conference. And so you have to work around the schedules of your opponents. And so when you say, well, Notre Dame still had the ability to schedule, but do they still have the ability to schedule in a sensible, feasible, fair way to your head coach?
Yeah, it's one thing. This Bavakwa talking openly about the 16 team. I think he did it on Dan Patrick is starting to run together. I think he did it on Dan Patrick's show too. But he made a very good point that 16 would have been great this year, but four would have been great this year too. Four would have been absolutely
Yeah.
fine this year. I mean, it's an interesting dynamic in that they have too many. They don't have the right teams, but they have too many teams this year. They have teams that cannot win it, but they don't have teams that could win it that are out of it. It just really broke badly. And I realize that it didn't randomly break badly. But do you think there's actually a team that was third? Did they finish third or fourth, Notre Dame, in odds to win the national championship before the playoff field was announced? I think they were third, although
They were
they should have
tied
been
for third. They were
yeah,
they were tied for
tied for third.
third
Yes, they
late
had
in
to
the
be.
week, and
Yeah,
then it might have dipped to fourth by Sunday morning. But they
because of
were
How Georgia looked
consensus
in Georgia. Yeah, yeah. So they're
consensus
fourth.
top.
You have the fourth, not that they should be ranked fourth because of that, but you have a team that could win it out of it, and you have four teams that cannot win it in it. I don't mean Miami, Alabama, Oklahoma. Alabama doesn't have the offense or running game. Oklahoma doesn't have the offense. The other two teams have no chance.
I said that Swarbrick signed off on the two group of five teams making the playoffs. So did Sankey.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
said that the ACC and I mean, excuse me, the SEC and Swarbrick. I mean, Sankey and Swarbrick very much puffed out their chests as the architects of this,
Yeah.
and that's why I felt so very strongly going through it that the ACC, even if Bama had lost 49-0, it's clear they were not going to be
Yeah.
penalized because the SEC was going to demand it, and then. I said repeatedly and said it last week multiple times before the rankings, like Duke winning was a nightmare scenario because I couldn't see them completely excluding the 17 team ACC. Now we know there seemingly were politics going on behind the scenes to also try and help ensure that.
And Tim, the other thing, Bavakwa was talking about, well, Alabama deserved to be in, and Miami deserved to be in, and Texas deserved to be in. Well, like, what are you talking?
That was his 16 team thing.
Well, I understand, but I mean, to me, that's like you're talking fantasy at that point because that was not feasible. That couldn't happen. I realize it was his 16 team format, and that's fine. I don't disagree with it. Anything beyond 16, I don't know what are we really doing.
Well, he made a great point that 16 still preserves the college football season. That's always been my point. How great November still is. I'm surprised November is still so great. It really is. But I do think once you get past 16, it gets a little difficult there. And it's a simple one: 11 at large, 5 automatic bids for the conferences. Do you have to start it a week earlier? That's semantics. You have to get rid of. If you get rid of, you can get rid of conference championship games.
Well, you need to. You need
they're
to
useless
do
right now.
If the result of the game doesn't matter, which we
Right.
clearly have found out, then
Yeah.
you shouldn't be playing them. And now that's that's just a matter of the conferences that being compensated for playing that championship game. If you're not going to play it, you're going to have to compensate them for what they would have made had you played it.
And if you're looking at like student athlete experience, that was tongue in cheek, by the way. Think of how happy IU and Texas Tech and Georgia players were for winning a conference championship in that situation. Anyone that wins one, but you still have to be able to penalize the team that loses it. I mean, it's the stupidest thing. All right. That's not the stupidest thing. It's the second stupidest thing. The dumbest thing is that some teams get penalized for losing and someone else doesn't. That is the stupid thing.
Well,
You
they moved up.
can't
They
have
moved
that.
up. They moved up to ninth after they played poorly,
That's also dumb.
and then they stayed at ninth when they
When
played even
worse.
worse. What are we doing?
Before Notre
Fourth
Dame
and
will go
two.
bowling, as John Bryce predicted. Then we'll get to the non-going bowling. But John Bryce, he put out a tweet that Notre Dame would plan to go bowling. That was expertly done, and then we got the official comment: Notre Dame will be going bowling this week, right? Is it? I'm sorry, I didn't read the whole thing. Is it this week? Go ahead,
Yeah, I
JD.
believe it's today, actually.
Okay.
They're going to pair up with teams. I think it's going to be like maybe running backs versus linebackers and wideouts versus DBs and O-line v D-line and all of that. And I don't know if it'll be quarterbacks versus safeties or how that will break up, but they're going to have a huge team competition. And I'm sure they'll have some Fighting Irish media productions out of that to showcase the fun and the camaraderie of a different type of bowling than what we expected to be talking about when this week began. So that's that. it is cool that Notre Dame is doing anything to raise money for local charities.
Yes, it is. We should point out very quickly, it is a give back to local. The competitive part of it is you're trying to raise the most money with the best scores in bowling, which makes it a lot of
Correct.
fun.
So guys are putting my NIL up against yours. Let's
Oh,
go.
that would be well. Then I don't know. The running backs room is looking pretty good for this one if they're going to have a bet on the way out because Jeremiah could probably go ahead and lose some money from what he's about to get coming to him. There is a bowl fallout, and I think part of Notre Dame not making the college football playoff and the constant chatter about it still is really more of a turning down the bowl game fallout nationally. We know why they turned down the bowl game. They weren't going to have players. That will help you turn down a bowl game. They were going to be greatly compromised with. It is a special situation when you think you're going to the playoff, you find out you're not going to the playoff, and you're not just surprised, you're absolutely shocked, as it was painted to us at least. The problem is the timing of it. The question that was not asked, maybe when you said there were plenty of questions asked, I was still in the queue, so I did not think there were plenty of questions asked. But my question was, would 24 hours, would the 24-hour, there's several Marcus Freeman idioms in here we could use. Would the 24-hour rule have helped Freeman and Bavacqua help make a decision that obviously the players voted on? Would that have helped 24 hours? Did you have 24 hours? I can't imagine you don't have 24 hours. I do know you have a condensed time period because you have to choose for the ACC, but the ACC telling you have a certain amount of time, screw them. We're going to take a little longer. Do they regret it at all? There was no choosing hard by doing this. There was choosing smart because they might have got lit up like a Christmas tree with not having any of their players. And there's the other thing fans really can't think about is Leonard Moore, we brought this up. Leonard Moore probably needs surgery. If he doesn't need surgery, he needs time. Sit. Billy Schrauth needs more time than he would have. Sit. Emil Wagner might be opting out. Sit. Go down the list, go down the list, go down the list. CJ Carr's probably fine. CJ Carr's probably fine. CJ Carr going to go out and play when all those guys aren't playing? You're going to go out there with one offensive lineman? So there are so many reasons to opt out. The problem was for me is the timing. I totally get the opt out. The timing ended up awful. It did look bad. That we didn't get in, screw it. Where in reality, they probably thought about it a lot. It's just they couldn't do anything about
it. And you wonder how much they discussed Saturday, Marcus Freeman and Pete Bavacqua and the Brain Trust. When did they start discussing whether or not they would accept a bowl invitation? Did they wait until they were left out? Because again, we know there were calendars that had December sketched out for the Notre Dame football program that showed the prospects of a playoff March and or what the schedule would look like depending on one of three bowls. We know that. So they'd made plans that they initially were considering going bowling, very obviously based on their calendar. But when did they first
you
discuss?
had to with the 0-2 start, right, JB?
Right.
I mean, 0-2 start means you got to start making contingency plans.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't, people are going to complain about everything anyway. Choosing a bowl game under the circumstances or whatever your individual circumstances are for your program, that's your call. Nobody else's opinion matters on that. Like a lot of people are, and I get it. The timing seemed to indicate.
Yeah, I just wonder
that
if 24 hours would have been viable.
Yeah, probably so. But the players decided. Now, I guess if you want to blame the process you have of allowing your players to decide it, then you can do that too. And I heard some people say, well, now you denied the seniors their opportunity to. You have no idea what you're even talking about. You don't understand the temperature of the room at all at Notre Dame.
I mean, they did vote. We got to keep saying they did vote. I assume the whole team didn't vote, but they voted. Captains certainly voted, and I'm sure. What do you call them? The old school SWAT team captains, probably not SWAT team anymore. I'm sure some of the higher ups were part of the vote as well.
I talked to Frank Pomerico yesterday, captain of the 73 national championship team. And he talked about, after they went to the Cotton Bowl 2 years and played Texas, then the upperclassmen the following year voted, it was different then. If you weren't playing for a national title, Notre Dame wasn't taking, or to improve your standing where you were rated before the game, they weren't going to bowl games. Well, he talked about being an underclassman, and the upperclassmen said, we don't want to go to a Gator Bowl and, play. So Notre Dame has turned down bowls for a long time. since the beginning of them going back to the bowl system after a 45-year hiatus from the Rose Bowl. So, that's that opinion, that outside opinion is meaningless. You have no idea what's going on within the program. And so say whatever the hell you want to say about that. You have no idea what the temperature of the room is at Notre Dame or any other school.
Yeah, my point was, would the temperature have changed in 24 hours?
Well, that's a good point.
But
I don't. They weren't given 24 hours, were
no,
they?
Well, I don't know why you have to. Have bowl games always been accepted by 6 o'clock on Sunday?
I don't know. It seems like we're all sitting around waiting for them to announce the bowl matchup.
Yeah,
so generally speaking, I guess they have.
Maybe if the ACC didn't hurry, I wouldn't.
I think, I think that's why Notre Dame, or it was indicated to me that the rest of the SEC was or ACC was waiting on Notre Dame. But I do think it has to do with they want to try and get logistics in order for the teams as quickly as possible. And there's a ton of layers to that. And also they want to ignite those ticket sales either Sunday night or first thing Monday morning for fan bases, the ones that are actually happy to be going to a bowl.
We were walking out with the Notre Dame administrator on Tuesday. And I was like, people were already complaining on my Twitter feed that it's a great experience for players. And I wanted to point out, dude, the bowl swag, they own all that. They could go buy all the bowl swag by themselves now. They don't have to worry about the bowl swag. Jeremiah Love could donate enough for bowl swag for 5 teams if he wanted to.
And the weather in Orlando on December 27th is very, very much hit and miss.
Yeah, that's true. News this week that wasn't unexpected. Still big fan of media's a big fan of Max Bullough. Players are a big fan of Max Bullough. I think everybody enjoys Max Bullough, but it was not surprising that Max Bullough will join his alma mater as co-defensive coordinator. If we were all to pick one guy that was probably going to leave sooner rather than later, upward mobility would point to Max Bullough. JB, thoughts on the inevitable happening? If not this year, is going to happen next year.
Yeah. My understanding is that Pat Fitzgerald is keeping the other gentleman, maybe Joe Rossi. And they're going to be co-defensive coordinators together with the expectation that Rossi probably only intends to coach a handful of more years, and then the position will be solely in charge of Max Bullough. We've all said for a long time that Max Bullough is an absolute future defensive coordinator. What better opportunity for him to do that than at his alma mater? I do understand from speaking with people with direct knowledge of the situation that Michigan State approached him initially maybe 10 days ago, and he thought it over and kind of thought he was going to remain at Notre Dame for right now. And then Michigan State came back much more aggressively and also made it clear that Max would have that pathway and also be able to bring Trey Reeder with him, who we've heard great things about as the assistant linebackers coach. And I think Trey will now become, because he's not going to be a GA, it's a full-time position with him. But I think a multi-year offer on the table for him and 6 figures. So I think those things swayed him. And I think also, when you're Max Bullough and especially a young Trey Reeder, you're sitting here now, you've been at Alabama with Nick Saban, you've been at Notre Dame with Marcus Freeman, and now you get to go be at Michigan State with Pat Fitzgerald and Rossi. I mean, that's a hell of a supporting cast for you as you continue to harvest your career.
JB, first of all, good on you being ahead of the story with Max Bullough. And yeah, who didn't enjoy the opportunities that we had to talk to Max Bullough? He had a lot to say. He was insightful. He told you a lot about his players, all stuff that we're clamoring for. Yeah. And he was fantastic. His grandfather, Jim Morris, was captain of the 1956 Notre Dame team. So obviously his ties with Notre Dame were great, but can't pass up the opportunity, especially since, JB, as you said, Joe Rossi. I mean, I don't know Joe Rossi personally, but I mean, I think that's a pretty good guy to co-coordinate with. He's done a really good job. I think they struggled this year, but you can only do so much. I mean, Michigan State defensively can only do so much in a short period of time. You need some time in the program to recruit and what have you to do what you need to do. But good for Max Bullough. Notre Dame will find another good linebacker coach. But this guy was really good. He was good. He hit the ground running. all of his all of his frontline linebackers were good and prepared to play. I'm sure that has a lot to do with the individuals himself, especially a guy like KVA. But good for Max Bulla. Notre Dame will find somebody really good, but Max Bulla is really good.
He everybody has favorites for different reasons, but everyone's favorite for fun and for wanting to actually go play a football game after talking to a coach would be Max Bull. He made you want to go do something when you're done talking to him. You're like, I gotta go get something accomplished in my life. I just talked to Max Bulla. He would hit when talking so often. You're like, this guy really, he seemed to really enjoy it.
And he didn't,
Like
and
talking
he
about
did,
his linebackers.
yeah, and he didn't curb his language. He's just a ball coach, and
The
he was
last
good.
time, the last time the bomb dropped 9 words in, by the way. One of my favorite, but he's passionate talking about those guys.
That he is. That he is.
Before we go to segment two, Priester, any Alistair Veo comments? Everybody drink if you're playing the Irish Illustrated drinking game. There you go.
Yeah, I don't think unfortunately, I think Alistair Vallejo is not going to come to Notre Dame because, I mean, the academic, and I get that. I thought I was prepared when I walked into my first Notre Dame classroom, which was my sophomore year. I was not, and it's a scary place to be when you're not. And I would dare say that I was better prepared than Alistair Vallejo would be if he were to come to Notre Dame. So it's a shame. I think he would be great, as everybody knows how I felt about him. I loved his film when I saw it. And I think he's got a really good career ahead of him. Unfortunately, it's not going to be at Notre Dame.
We'll cover the Michigan coaching search at some point in their offseason. Irish fans, you remember Rocket Ismail, his speed, his signature, his impact on Notre Dame football. Now you can wear his legacy. Signature Pro Apparel's Rocket Ismail collection is officially open for pre-order, featuring premium polos and rugby shirts, each embroidered with Rocket's authentic signature and officially licensed by Notre Dame. Pre-orders will be perfectly timed for holiday gifting. Visit signaturepro.com and use the code IRISH20 to save 20% before pre-orders close soon. That's signaturepro.com. Legacy in every thread. We'll be back with segment two, burning up the boards. With football season winding down, I've been looking to find the best ticket deals, both for family and friends, but also as a memorable gift idea. That's why I want to offer the sponsor of today's Burning Up the Boards, SeatGeek, a huge shout out. With over 35 million downloads, SeatGeek is the #1 rated ticketing app. There are more than 70,000 events listed on SeatGeek, including concerts, sports, festivals, and more. So whether you're an Irish fan looking for a ticket to next year's AC/DC concert in September, or any of the NFL playoffs matchups down the road, SeatGeek has your back. Each ticket is rated on a scale of 1 to 10, so you know you're getting a good deal. Look for the green dots. Green means good, red means bad. Plus, every ticket is backed by their buyer guarantee. And of course, I have a code for you guys. You can use IRISH10, that's all capital letters in the number 10, for 10% off your next set of tickets at SeatGeek. 10% off any tickets with promo code IRISH10. Make sure you click the link in the description to download the app and have the code automatically added to your account so you can use it later. Thank you, SeatGeek. Our first question of segment two comes from Dallas Irish 83. I'm going to ask you guys, maybe rank them. Which of the following changed circumstances, if any, would have resulted in Notre Dame making the playoff? Number 1, UVA winning the ACC championship game. Number 2, Mack Rhoades remaining as chair of the playoff committee. Number 3, Alabama losing the SEC championship game by 28 points rather than 21. Alabama losing to Florida State in October instead of August. One of Notre Dame's victories coming against another top 25 team.
You want to go first, JB?
Sure. Number one, I feel definitively would have changed it because then I think that the committee would have dropped Alabama to number 10. Virginia would have been number 11, and Notre Dame would have inched up to number 9. I just will firmly and forever believe that regardless of Hunter Yurachek's comments, and we saw him pretty much fail miserably every single week on television and discussing the rankings. But I just believe that the decision was made really in the penultimate weekend and finally there fully in the final weekend that the 17-team ACC was not going to be left out. And there are people out there who believe that the ACC being left out quite literally could have spelled the beginning of the end for that league, and it's still suffering from some self-inflicted wounds and some terrible programs as it is. But there are people out there that I've spoken with who believe the ACC being shut out would have really caused the Clemsons and the Florida States and the North Carolinas, really probably mainly those three, to suddenly and swiftly start looking around for additional options. So number one, I think would have impacted Notre Dame very positively. Number three, no. Number two, no. Number four, Alabama losing to FSU in October instead of August. Yeah, probably
Mhm.
because FSU was quite horrific by the middle of October. So yeah, I think so. And then one of Notre Dame's other victories coming against another top 25 team, that probably would have helped. Then I think you would have had a little bit more to stand on in the debate with Oklahoma and Alabama, which again, I don't think there was enough debate centered on Notre Dame side by side with Oklahoma, let alone Alabama. So to me, that's where some things were missed. Like it should have been a much more strenuous evaluation of Oklahoma, Alabama, and Notre Dame. But I do believe number one would have absolutely positively impacted Notre Dame. And number four and five also would have helped Notre Dame.
Well, I'm not going to disagree with you as with regards to UVA, John. I mean, I'm going to follow your lead on that. The one that absolutely wouldn't have mattered was how many points Alabama lost by in the SEC championship game, because it was repeated over and over again that you can't exclude a team that was the number one seed in the SEC championship game. So obviously, it didn't matter whatsoever. I would think Notre Dame winning another game against the top 25 would have helped, but I don't know. I can't compare Mac Rhodes to Jurasek or anything like that. But one thing I'm absolutely positive of, the Alabama score, it didn't matter because they had already qualified, which is all the reason in the world to come up with an alternative to playing that game, because you're hurting. Ultimately, that's hurting the playoff system. And I realize it's a money grab. I think I mentioned it on a podcast that I had said something to Jack Swarbrick about, the SEC will never give up their championship game. He said, yeah, they will if you compensate them for it,
Mhm.
for not playing it, essentially. And so,
Hmm.
that's true. But man, I don't, Alabama losing to Florida State in October. That's a really good point. First of all, Dallas Irish 83. I thought you did a great job in listing these five, but I don't know. I mean, I'd pick UVA one, and the second one would be Notre Dame winning another top 25.
I think if Notre Dame beat, I'm going to reiterate this. I think I said it Monday. If Notre Dame beat USC in November at USC, nothing
Oh
else
no,
changes.
that's a good point. Yeah, it's
Stanford
similar to
goes
that.
October, Notre Dame's at USC in November. They go from whatever to in. I just think that they're in from that. Now, you could also throw like maybe USC shouldn't have lost to Illinois and they would have beaten undefeated USC and they would have been, people would have loved Notre Dame, but they'd already lost to Illinois and they were a 10-point favorite instead of a 7-point favorite. Oh, there's so many little things in there.
A lot
If
of
you just
bad.
put, if you flip Stanford and USC, I think
Yeah,
Notre Dame gets in.
that's a great point. It goes back to the one point I've made. I know I've made it several times, but if you had Syracuse of 2024 and you had Virginia of 2025,
You're
flip
good.
flop for when Notre Dame played them, that schedule looked completely different.
Yeah. Next question, speaking of next year, from Sean Nod 64, or maybe it's Shanad 64. Outside of the running back room, is there a position that you confidently state will be worse in 2026 than this past season? Can the step back from the running backs room be solely alleviated by an OL returning Joe Moore Award true winning form? In other words, like not preseason Joe Moore Award winner, but an
Yeah,
actual Joe Moore winning form.
I don't know that the Joe Moore award winning line, that doesn't guarantee you. I mean, we're talking about Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price. We're talking about Jeremiah Love, the greatest running back, the most well rounded, all around explosive running back in the school's history, and then Jadarian Price being pretty damn close behind that. So no, I wouldn't say that would do it alone. You're going to have to supplement. I mean, when we talk about receivers, I include Raritan in there. You're going to have to get a big bump with the tight end and or mainly the wide receiver room, because Malachi Fields and Will Pauling gave that pass receiving core a real boost.
Yeah. I mean, it
He was assumed
certainly would
portal. He
be a
assumed portal
massive,
here. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, certainly would be an absolutely massive boost if you have a returning CJ Carr that will be even more attuned to certain run checks and navigating the offense, especially if it's behind a truly dominant offensive line. And yeah, you expect that the portal needs to be a home of a running back priority for Notre Dame, and you've got to continue to get the two you hope to keep back, Aeneas Williams and Nolan James there. And then I really like the two freshmen, and so we'll see if they can wedge their way in. But we know Jadarian Price was going to play as a true freshman until his Achilles
Yeah.
injury, and so we do know this coaching staff will let the freshmen play really anywhere, but especially that spot if they earn it.
Don't you guys think that, I mean, more than ever, there's going to be guys lining up in the transfer portal calling Notre Dame saying, I want to play for you guys,
But
especially
just
a wide
last year,
receiver.
I'm sure they were lining up too. Last year as
Yeah,
well.
but I mean,
Yeah.
especially now that CJ, I mean, everybody's seen what
Oh
CJ Carr
yeah,
can
yeah,
do.
yeah,
Why,
yeah.
especially why I'm wide receiver in particular, Tim. I would think they'd be clamoring for an opportunity to hook up with him.
I wouldn't think unless everything goes wrong with. I mean, you could if all the linemen that could like if Billy Schroff and Emil Wagner don't come back and Ashton Craig's not back until midseason. I mean, there's offensive line could be worse than it was this year, but I just don't expect you can't expect everybody to.
Well, you
When
still, I
you're
mean,
answering this question, you can't expect everybody not to be there either.
no,
That's
and you still, I mean, I think Otting and Epsher give you a lot to be hopeful for moving forward, whether they're in the lineup
yeah.
or in a backup role. I mean, hell, I thought they.
Schroff is pretty important to next year's run.
No, there's no doubt. There's no doubt. And Craig, I mean, conceivably is your best offensive lineman, but Otting did a hell of a job, and there's a lot to like about being lined up behind those guys or being a wide receiver with those guys protecting the quarterback that's throwing the football to you.
Before JB reads this next question, I will point out we can answer this question each once a month for 9 months because that's the type of question this one is. But we'll be finding out more as the portal goes along.
Yeah, well, the good news is the portal being only one window means that it ends almost exactly 5 weeks to the day. So we'll have a ton of answers on where this all is going by January 16th, which is, I guess, 5 weeks from tomorrow. So we'll know a heck of a lot at that point in time. All right, question number three from Bobby 1556. Notre Dame seems to have built up a hell of a lot of goodwill through the first 4 years of Marcus Freeman. That feels like it's completely out the window. It feels as if the entire college landscape is against Notre Dame. Do you believe there's truth to this or just a gut reaction to a crappy situation? Should Notre Dame embrace being the villain? Gentlemen, the floor is yours.
Tim, go ahead.
I the for me, it's unfortunate that the bowl response is what is probably carrying the lack of good or the loss of goodwill among the fan base. I think being left out of the playoff, stating how angry you are to be left out of the playoff, Dan Patrick Show being left out of the playoff, I feel like that would not take away goodwill for more than a week because you have every right to be upset about that. Everybody knows you have every right to be upset about it. People that don't believe you didn't belong in the playoffs still know you have a right to be upset about it, right? Like if people think, no, Alabama, Miami belonged in over Notre Dame, you still feel like they have a right to be upset about it. Notre Dame, they're in the conversation. They were the team left out. That usually goes away after a week. I feel like the declining the sad thing is the declining the bowl, which Notre Dame probably made the right choice to do, and they definitely made the right choice if you ask your captains, your leadership, and none of them want to play. You should probably decline the bowl. As Priester said, this you're not in that room. You have no idea. So we take all of that at face value. I think it's unfortunate that the bowl decision and constantly talking about it here is what's really impacting the lack of goodwill. I feel like the playoff thing would have passed in a week. And if you turn down your bowl, if you had a chance to turn down your bowl on Monday rather than Sunday during the fresh wound, it might not have been as bad either. And if you just didn't talk about it anymore, I feel like they shouldn't keep talking about it.
Yeah, I think in the part of our notes here, Tim, was would Mark in the first segment would Marcus Freeman or the players have any regrets at this point? I don't think the players do.
I don't either.
I think if you're the head coach, you probably want to, regardless of the circumstances, would like a shot at somebody. I think
Yeah,
that's
I know
just
you're
how
going to
you.
get into. I want to interrupt very quickly, Tim, because I know you're going to get into this. I wrote in Monday Musings, imagine being one of those players who played his last game. I did not mean they didn't want to play their last game, but they're looking right now thinking, Stanford was the last time I'm ever going to play football for some people.
Yeah.
Stanford was the last time I'm ever going to play for Notre Dame for many people.
So there
People aren't
maybe,
playing football
yeah,
anymore, and
maybe
they play at Stanford.
it's
But
unfair for me to say
that
they.
doesn't mean they didn't vote. I agree. I'm not playing in a stupid bowl game because this
Yeah.
happened. They might have done that, but they still look back and are like, "Oh God, that's it. I'm done."
Yeah. I just came out of Tuesday thinking, man, look how far this has come since Notre Dame played in a national title game and all the goodwill that Marcus Freeman built up, winning 13 in a row. And I just didn't think that it was handled properly. And I can't imagine. I mean, I can't imagine how Notre Dame would go back at what happened here earlier this week and say, okay, well, we handled that just the way we should have. When the Big 12 commissioners starting to take shots at Pete Bavacqua, it's out of
A
control, out of
false
your
shot, by the
control.
way, a false shot. But I get your point. Not everybody knows
Yeah,
it's a false
he's
shot.
well.
Yeah.
I in my Thursday thoughts. I mean, I wrote. I mean, this guy's out ahead of his skis too. That's none of your business either.
Plus, he was wrong. He was wrong. COVID Notre Dame wasn't saved by the ACC.
Oh, yeah,
Notre Dame saved college football.
no,
Like, that was wrong. It was
well,
false.
he's saying it from the standpoint that they made them a full member for the season. I get that, but he doesn't. Again, he didn't understand the inner workings of that. Where Jack Swarbrick is saying, where the ACC's ready to call the season,
Right.
along with the Pac-12 and the Big Ten, and Jack Swarbrick saying, give me 2 more weeks, and over that 2 weeks, things settled down and it became feasible and it became logical to go ahead and play football. Yeah, from that perspective, again, why is he even getting involved?
Yeah, exactly. But to your point, everybody is getting involved now in the lack of
No
goodwill.
doubt.
That is the
Yeah,
point that you're making. Yeah.
no doubt, no doubt.
Which is tough. And I think that's the point of the question. Like, whether you're right or not, people weren't always right when they were complimenting Notre Dame and Marcus Freeman, everything about Notre Dame either. But it was just they were like, oh man, that place is cool.
Yeah,
Now it's like they're whining. Whether you're right
JB.
or not, that's the way it is.
Yeah, JB.
Yes,
What are
sir.
your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I do think that it's real. I mean, Notre Dame should lean into it. Maybe Notre Dame is, in effect, leaning into it. Again, I'll go back to what I said first segment. I think that the leaking of the MOU is probably more damaging than Notre Dame feeling like they should have been left out. Because I think if you take the time to listen to what Notre Dame says, and Pete Bavacqua did say this on Monday, like, if we start out 19th, we probably feel a little bit differently. Like, we know the hill we have to climb, but you were never not in the playoffs until you were not in the
Yeah.
playoffs. And
Yeah,
I think that's the overriding thing. But, say that, be done with it. Don't leak the MOU. The MOU people are already, or the anti-MOU people are already saying, look at Notre Dame feeling like they get special dispensation, and now they're mad and they're not getting their ball. They're not going to play their ball, and they're going to leak this information that they've got this super secret exclusive deal. And when was it signed? Allegedly earlier this year, and all of this stuff. So I do think that I don't think it changes anything with, like, Greg McElroy loves Notre Dame, the Notre Dame program under Marcus Freeman, and so does Kirk Herbstreit. Those guys aren't going to cheap shot Notre Dame. They're too classy to do that.
you'll get some pushback on that comment, JB, but I agree with you. I mean, we know Greg McElroy.
Yeah.
He has a tremendous amount of respect and like for Notre Dame. We have a question from Corn Dog Connor. How do you expect the offense to change next year as the top 2 running backs in the country leave and the keys are presumably handed over to CJ Carr fully?
It's interesting. But obviously, we answer this question mid and post spring too. But let's assume no tight ends are added, okay? Because if you add a Max Clare tight end, then there's plenty of focus that the tight end is going to be 12 package again. But if you have healthy Flanagan, the young Mr. Flanagan, and Ty Washington, and you bring in receivers the level of Fields and Pauling, you cannot bring in running backs the level of Price. I think the keys are handed a little bit over to CJ Carr. There is more of a 3 receiver set because your 2 tight end packages, because you were focused on running the football and maintaining possession or maintaining clock. And I think it's smart to go away from it. And 2 years down the road, when your freshman tight ends are 3 years down the road are becoming candidates for starting positions, you might go back to it. You have to evolve with your offense, and I think this one can evolve with a little bit more CJ Carr 11 package than we were used to. Along
I
with the
completely.
offensive line driven program. You can have an offensive line driven program where you're still blocking and passing. It just doesn't mean you have to run
Yeah.
inside zone because you're an offensive line driven program.
Yeah, and there were some encouraging. I mean, look, I fully expect Notre Dame to be active in the portal at the wide receiver position, but there were
Yeah.
some encouraging things this year from KK Smith and Micah Gilbert. The great question mark, the enigma that is the Jaden Greathouse situation. It'd be wonderful if we get some clarity on that sooner rather than later. But there should be a much healthier and deeper tight end room next year. I think that's significant. So I still think that Notre Dame will have a chance to be balanced, but they might do a little bit more throwing first to set up the run.
Well, Mike Denbrock would love to have a three wide out
Mhm.
set up a majority of the time. That's where he had tremendous success at LSU, and I don't think that he would have the slightest problem using a ton of three wide receiver sets. Tim, you don't think that Notre Dame has a freshman wide receiver that could hit the ground running and make an immediate impact this next fall
I do, but Notre Dame better go to the portal for a wide receiver.
for a wide
Yep.
receiver tight end?
For wide receiver. Notre Dame
Oh
needs
yeah,
wide
sure.
receivers
Oh
in
no,
the
I
portal.
agree. Oh
Yeah.
totally. At least one. But
Oh, you said freshman wide receiver to me. You meant freshman tight
did I
end.
say I meant tight end? Yeah,
You
I'm
did, yeah.
sorry.
That's why I was confused.
Yeah,
They do, but they need. They do. Yeah, no. I think they have a tight end that will make an impact. But
yeah,
I felt James Flanagan was going to make an impact too, and it's not.
yeah.
It's not easy at freshman. Remember, only one's ever made a major impact as a freshman. Two, Kyle
No,
Rudolph
you're
and Michael Mayer.
yeah, you're right. But I look at Premer differently than I did Flanagan. I
Yeah,
actually in my evaluation of Flanagan said when I did a film review, I said I thought he was a little stiff in the passing game. So I didn't quite look at him the same way. Premer, I look at a lot differently. But Denbrock, three wide, absolutely.
yeah.
With CJ Carr, absolutely.
Speaking of portal, next question is Irish 945. Over under on portal additions. I'll ask you guys and I'll chime in when I disagree. Quarterback 0.5.
JB, let's take
Over.
turns.
Go ahead, JB.
I would say over. Over.
I will say over also.
I say over as well. See, I chimed in both times. Running back 1.5.
I'll say under there.
Under.
Under, but exactly one. Wide receiver 2.5.
I love the line on this one
Yes.
because I think it's really straddling.
It is a
that
good line.
I'm going to say over because it was just a couple years ago they brought in three wide receivers. Why not?
I'll say under because I think they'll bring in maybe exactly two. Because I think if you bring in three and you have transparency in your program, you lose some of those other guys that
That's
you
true. That's
maybe
true.
still hoping to develop.
I will go. God, I would probably guess two. I'm just for the fun of it. I'm going to go over because I think you could lose one before you gain your third one. Does that make sense? Once you grab two, you might be losing one, and then you go for another one, and then you don't care when a couple guys leave after that because who cares if the bottom of your roster leaves as long as he's not a promising rising redshirt freshman that we all
Yeah.
know. Tight end 0.5.
I'll say over.
I'll say under.
I will roll with
So
under.
you like Premer too?
I'll roll with under because they have five to yeah. I'll roll with under.
Okay.
Offensive line 0.5.
Under.
Under.
Yeah, they got a lot of linemen. Better hope it's under. Defensive tackle 1.5.
Your turn, JB.
I'll go over. I'll go over.
No, it really is.
No, I know. Yeah, I'll say over because they'll sign two.
Yeah, I definitely say over. I have no. Yeah, definitely
No,
over.
you have no qualms saying over.
No.
Defensive end. Tim Priester, your turn. 0.5.
Under.
Oh, I'll say over. I think they'll try to get one.
I'll go over too because you lose Tui Halamaka and Botello. So
Okay.
I'll go over. Linebacker 0.5.
I think it's my turn. Under.
I will also say under.
Courting a linebacker to Osbury, Faremo, Bowen, and KVA in the portal. is
Good
you got
luck.
to just develop your other guys, man.
Yeah.
That's a tough one right there. So I'll say under. I'll say under even if you try, because what are you gonna? So
Right.
when
They're
they
like,
play, I don't know. Somewhere along the way you'll play. I don't know. What are you gonna tell
I
them?
mean, unless you're Jacob Rodriguez, who's cracking that rotation,
Yeah, I
you
don't
know?
think that's a great one to go join. Cornerback nickel 0.5. Come on. Forever.
Over,
oh, yeah, I
Yes.
was going to
over.
say, I think
Forever.
so. You're leaning toward over, T.O. Is that what you're telling us?
Uh-huh. Forever. Safety 0.5. Let's just assume
Yeah, there's a Don Schuler decision
Don
here, is
Schuler's
there?
on the team.
Then I'll say under.
I mean, it makes it over if he's not, so that's not as hard to do. So I'll guess under that he stays.
Yeah.
Agrees, Bryce, or not?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, yes, I agree.
Okay. Kicker. You guys better answer correctly on this one.
Well, you got
I mean,
you've got to try to
Over.
bring somebody. Yeah, you've
Over.
got to try to bring somebody
you
in.
have to. Yeah.
The best one. Find the best one. And punter.
Over.
Probably over. We've not yet received any clarity on whether or not
I checked.
Rendell can get a third year or wants a third year, correct?
I did check today and got the same answer as the end of October. As far as we know, this is his last year pending the NCAA. So we don't know. I will say over just because at this point last year they knew he was coming back. Eric Schmidt, we did kind of is a punter.
That's I was getting ready to make that point. And
He's not a
apparently a
kicker.
pretty good. Right.
He's a punter, obviously. But no, I'm just kidding. But he was a punter. He was supposed to be a punter and kickoff specialist. So I could see Eric Schmidt being the guy.
Correct.
But I would go, that doesn't hurt to bring somebody in and compete. That's not a problem there. I will bump that next question to next week. I like that. But name, image, and thickness. We will read your question next week because that is an awesome name and it will probably have a better answer for you by then. JB, you're up.
All right. My apologies there. Siggy 12. How would you evaluate the 2025 schedule? There's a lot of commentary around how weak it was versus other playoff contenders. In my opinion, the schedule was just fine. They just didn't win the important games to make it look strong. A win versus Miami or Texas A&M with wins versus USC and Pitt has a much different ring than just wins versus USC and Pitt. Gentlemen?
The schedule. Let me throw some names out here. Wisconsin, Rice.
He means this. He means 2020. The 2025
this season.
Oh.
He thinks the schedule is fine, and they lost the wrong game.
Well, yeah, geez, sorry about that.
I'll give you 2026 schedule next week. We'll write it in.
Yeah, okay. Well, I was just about to give it to you.
No.
No,
I think it's happy to say it trended down, and when Boise State got run over by South Florida, I was like, "This is a problem, man."
And USC having some opportunities and letting them slip away. Look, it wasn't good enough. That's the bottom line.
I think his point is, would we be complaining so much about the schedule if they beat one of those two? If they beat A&M, if the hold is called and on 4th and 5th, 16,
that's fair. Complete. I think that's fair, and we probably would look at it very differently. Yeah.
I would probably say, boy, that schedule stunk, but it doesn't matter because Notre Dame's 11-1. They're in the playoff, and everybody can go screw off. So I still think that the schedule was bad, though. It trended down.
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm pretty documented there as saying Notre Dame, I think, did some solid things outside of its ACC arrangement to try and fortify the schedule. I still don't think that there's enough talk about the fact that Notre Dame played 12 true games in the regular season and not 11 plus a money cupcake. So here's my question as I was reading this question earlier and reading it again right now. Okay, win one of those early season games, but you still have a second loss along the way. So do you think Notre Dame's in at 10-2, but with one of those wins being substituted for Miami or Texas A&M and one of the losses maybe to Pittsburgh?
Or USC.
It would have to be USC.
Pittsburgh,
it would kill them because of Miami.
Yeah. I think what another thing that's not being said here is that Notre Dame made a concession by playing Miami when they did.
Yeah, Notre Dame. I agree with that too, Tim. Well, not I don't agree with it. You just stated a fact, so I agree with the facts you
Right.
just stated. I JB. No, they wouldn't have made the playoff if they beat A&M and lost to USC and or anybody else. They needed that 10-game winning streak to look like one of the best teams in the country with one of those fake committee things. Well, we just picked the teams that are looking best right now. I don't think they would have made the playoff with a loss anywhere else. Miami and someone else, they're out, is my opinion, because their schedules was not good enough. They just didn't have enough
Interesting.
people to beat.
Do you want to hear next year's real quick?
No, we'll do that on our next podcast. So we're going
Okay.
to keep moving on here, Priester.
All right. All right. We have a question from Indy Irish 99. Who selects the members of the CFP selection committee? And how can people who have a financial interest in the outcome, either personally or to their employee, for example, the SEC sharing the playoff money for its member schools, how do you become part of the committee? Is there a push to eliminate these conflicts of interest?
JB, you go first, but I'd like to add the question to you. How dare you, JB? Go ahead. There's no.
Yeah, I think that that you're selected by your peers. They meet, you serve a certain length of terms. You're not on there indefinitely or until you decide you're tired of it. You have a finite time. I think it's usually 2 to 6 years, I want to say. I need to look that up more precisely, but it is a selected term and you're on there for just the duration of that term. You're supposed to have recusals in the room, like if you're well, Wesley Walls this year, who
Ole Miss.
was
Yeah.
a rep and a star player at Ole Miss. He physically had to get up and leave the room whenever Ole Miss was the topic of discussion. Then also, my understanding is that when the topic of discussion is other SEC schools, he has to like abstain from voting in those pods. So that's kind of how they attempt to mitigate the conflict of interest and especially the financial interest. And I think that's a good point. I think the SEC was bent on ratcheting up its number of participants this year after only getting in, I guess, three last year, which, by the way, was the appropriate number. And then also the SEC didn't get as good a recent TV deal as what did the Big Ten. And so the SEC is trying to find additional ways to amplify its revenue. And certainly more teams in the playoffs equals more teams for for the SEC. I do think, again, I'll say it again, there was obvious bias to ensure that the 17 team ACC was represented when Virginia didn't get the job done.
The recusals are interesting because just not voting and leaving. Because I'm kind of reading it over. Seems like Mizell was a partial recusal for Notre Dame, but not full. I wonder. So Yurachek would only be a full recusal for Arkansas and Appalachian State, which weren't involved. Mark D'Antonio would be a full recusal for Michigan State. I wish there was a way of really knowing what you're actually talking about and what influence. I mean, you're in the room at some point. You have some impact on it. I get the question. The question is why are people with any financial stake at all involved in the playoff committee?
Is that a reference to Mizell?
No, it's all. I mean, there's so many people.
Okay.
They all have something. Like Wesley, everybody in
Hey,
there has
do-
a financial stake to somebody.
Tim, do you know Ivan Mizell?
I have met him once. Yeah, that's all.
Okay.
Yep.
Do you,
Well, I met him. I
JB,
met
do you
him.
know him?
I've met him a couple of times, but nothing more than just a very superficial
I met
relationship.
him a lot
So,
last year, actually, at the Sugar Bowl because we had an extra day of hanging around.
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
That was that. But I kind of met him at the Sugar Bowl, and then for 3 more days, I spoke with Ivan myself because of we were sitting around New Orleans. So.
Well,
Yeah, I mean, I think the committee tries to have as many diverse viewpoints as possible in that committee room. Then that's sort of supposed to be the checks and balances, is that, the committee is not 13 people all from the SEC and the Big 12. And then you have, more important, the committee's board of directors, which, as I noted earlier this week and maybe last week as well, includes the four power conferences plus the Mountain West plus the Sun Belt, plus Notre Dame, plus maybe the being rebuilt Pac-12 conference. There's about 7 or 8 that comprise the board of governors. So it's all about money, though. Like
Yeah,
every
that's
single
the
component.
question. That's what the question's about. It's all
yeah.
about money.
Look, I know the gentleman. I've known him for a long time. We're both old sports writers. I find him to be one of the most distinguished and honorable men that I've ever known in the profession. That's all I can say about it. I mean, I understand that a lot of people are upset with him and his involvement and what have you. All I can
But he wasn't
all,
involved in Notre Dame at all. That's
I
the
know, I know, I
people
know.
forget. Yeah.
I get that. No, I get that part. I get that part. But I mean, I just wanted to say that about the guy because I mean, I've known him for a long time. I don't know him well. I'm not saying I know him that well, but enough to pick up the phone or for him to pick up the phone and call me. And I mean, him and Malcolm Moran, I think, among the sports writers I've known
Yeah.
through my career, are the two of the most honorable and distinguished guys I've ever known.
Malcolm Moran was at SEC, or was at the Sugar Bowl quite a bit, remember? As
Yeah,
well. Spoke with him a lot.
yeah.
Yeah.
And he did he was a participant in the mock selection with me this fall.
Oh, right. That's right. You mentioned that. Yeah.
Malcolm
Yeah.
was,
Malcolm was, yeah.
Yeah,
yeah,
great guy.
yeah, really good guy.
Next question is Howens 22. Whenever Marcus Freeman potentially going to the NFL is discussed, it seems like it is just a given that he will one day want to make that move. Has he discussed that as being a goal behind closed doors, or is it just assumed that a competitor such as Marcus would want to compete at that level? In other words, to play devil's advocate, why couldn't Marcus Freeman be the head coach at Notre Dame for a decade?
He could be. I mean, I wouldn't rule out the possibility of that, but I think when you're in the profession, Saban said some stuff about no, not Saban. Urban Meyer said some stuff about he recommended that Freeman stay in the college game because when you go to the NFL, you lose control of a lot of things, and I get that. But it's a lifestyle. I mean, it's a lifestyle, and how many coaches go to the NFL and can assure themselves of a 10-year career as a head coach? I mean, that's really, really, really difficult to do. But I think it's I don't. I think a lot of coaches compare and contrast, and when they look at the NFL game, as long as you can stay employed, which is harder than it is in college, even although that's diminishing as well in college. Just the lifestyle, the 365 days a year of recruiting is an absurd ask of a football coach. So, is that a goal? I think I think that it possibly is. I don't think that it's impossible that he stays at Notre Dame for that long, but I think that the lifestyle that an NFL coach can live is considerably better than what you can do on the college level.
Yeah, for me, I think you make a very valid point there. The money in the NFL, even though we heard Pete Bavacqua say he has no hand, the money in the NFL. I mean, Sean Payton is making $20 million a year. I know that from multiple people. 20.
Ooh.
There are, I think, 8 NFL coaches making 15 million or more per year.
Have they all been to the
Uh,
Super Bowl or not?
I
I mean,
don't think
off the
so.
top of your head, off the top of your head, you know what I mean? Like
Right.
most.
No, I don't think so. I think some
Okay.
of those are maybe young first-time head coaches that are making that wage.
Well, there goes my
So,
answer. Okay,
but
so
here's the other thing that I say applies not just to Marcus, but any number of coaches that I talk to, including some head coaches this week when I've been trying to track the carousel, and that is so many more college guys more than ever before are looking to get into the NFL because the rules are level and the calendar is set. And I don't think there's enough realization or probably discussion, and maybe that's my fault or our fault, about how much coaches are hating this nebulous existence of college football right now. And it's worse in football than it is in any of the other NCAA sports. But for example, I spoke to an SEC general manager this week who told me that he had direct knowledge that Texas A&M had about $42 million invested in this year's roster and that it expected next year's roster to creep closer to 50 million. There's been a number of stories written, and Texas Tech has been pretty brazen about having a 50 to $54 million roster this year that is the number 4 seed in the CFP. And Notre Dame has empowered Marcus Freeman, but it has not spent money like that. And again, Pete addressed it the other day. I thought it was very good of him to address it. Like the rules are so scattershot right
mm,
now. I mean, I had a person directly involved saying like, if we can't get a deal approved through NIL Go, we just do the deal anyway and don't tell anybody. That's where things are right now. That's
Yeah,
That was a statement to me in the last 2 weeks, a direct statement to me by somebody involved in these transactions, and so I think that stuff is why. Plus, Marcus is the ultimate competitor. He's a guy who's you know stayed on a Navy ship and trained with SEALs and all of this stuff, and he wants to compete, and he's a natural leader of men, and I don't think he's a control freak because of how he empowers everybody around him.
Yeah,
I
it's a good point.
I want to throw in here like how much. I mean, Marcus Freeman is the head coach at Notre Dame, even if he 100% in 2 years trusts Mike Martin to handle everything, you're still negotiating now with parents and kids. 90 of them, 90 negotiations for money, as opposed to letting your general manager handle it and you jump in for the quarterback in the NFL. Like you have to stay out of it in the NFL if you're Marcus. They're not hiring Marcus Freeman to be general manager and head coach, so he'll become a head coach in the NFL. That would be really rough. If you're sitting, you have to talk to no. I got to use a player that doesn't exist anymore. You have to talk to, let's say we're back in 2019. You're talking to Deion McIntosh about his contract. Are you kidding me? You really want to be involved in that kind of stuff? Like, and he'd be like, "Well, I want $250,000 because I had 5 touchdowns." We'll get someone else to get 5 touchdowns. I would get so annoyed with that stuff. But I want to quickly to wrap this up at a dinner, and I'm going to skew the numbers here, but I'm going to keep the percentages. Had a dinner with about 10 people right before the season ended. The bet was when Marcus Freeman will not be at Notre Dame anymore. One person said he'll be a decade guy in, he'll be here in 2032. 3 people said he'll be gone by the after next year, after 2026. No one said he would be gone for 2026. We had Giants information at the time. I took the bet that he'd coach Notre Dame in 2027, but nobody else would take the bet that he would coach Notre Dame in 2027 of 6 more people. So when people say, "Do you think he might have a?" and these are not random people.
Understandable.
No,
Yes,
these are not random people. These are
understood.
people that know things. And I mean, I would be very surprised if he takes the Giants job right now because I've been told point blank 3 different times by 2 different people the Giants aren't going to hire a college coach. So I was like, well, if that's the case right now, I'd be surprised. But many people said 2026 would be his last year. I was willing to say, nah, he'll coach 2026, 2027. But it's interesting the 2026 team. I don't think this is why they said it. I mean, you could lose like your best players because they're all juniors, rising juniors.
Right.
You lose a lot. I don't think that was the point, but to answer Howen's question, it is widely speculated that he will want to be in the NFL. We're not making that up just on this podcast every once in a while.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We wouldn't talk about it as much as we did.
No,
we do.
No.
If we didn't think it was a realistic possibility, and the Giants, that's not going to happen now, but it can all. I mean, look, any great college coach. I mean, it doesn't matter what school you're at. You're on the verge of jumping to the NFL if the opportunity arises.
Well, Bryce just pointed out. I mean, off the top of my head, Bryce, you're right. I mean, you're looking at Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay, Andy Reid, Mike Tomlin, John Harbaugh, Jim Harbaugh, Nick Sirianni. What kind of a raise did Dan Campbell get? I mean, what about I mean,
we're talking 50. They're all making 15.
No, I'm just saying, like off the top of my head, those guys are all going to be paid an insane amount of money. And they're not all Super Bowl winning coaches, especially Jim Harbaugh. I know that for a fact. All right, next question is Irish from A2. This is the most shocking end. Oh, sorry, Bryce, go ahead.
No, it's just because I want to cheat. Irish from A2. This is the most shocking end to a season since, I will cheat and answer it with great alacrity, 2021, because Notre Dame's on the fringe of the playoffs. You finish your season out at Stanford. You think you're going to be waiting to see if you're going to get a playoff bid or not, get some of the help that you need, and instead you're dealing with the jolting end of the Brian Kelly era and the what now proved to be a very fruitful transition to the Marcus Freeman era. So that's my answer.
That would be the first one that comes to mind for me, just because of the unsettling nature. I know when Holtz, Notre Dame didn't go to a bowl game after his last game.
That's my answer. Is 96.
Because your next head coach was Davey. He was on the staff, and they still didn't go to a bowl game that year.
I feel like they were going to go to the bowl game, except they lost to USC, and everything just stunk all of a sudden. Decided not to go to the bowl game. It was like, well, you went from 8th in the country and 8-2 to losing to USC, and all of a sudden your bowl got worse too, right? The bowl back then, your bowl got a lot worse.
Yeah.
Than that loss. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that modern era, I mean, 21's the call. It was weird in '09 when they were 6-2, looking pretty good. They lost their last four. Charlie Weiss was fired. Jimmy Clausen and Golden Tate left, and they had a press conference celebrating Jimmy Clausen and Golden Tate leaving as juniors. I found that a little strange. That was a misstep by the Irish. What was that? Hey, let's celebrate these two
It
guys leaving,
was
Billy.
because it was so new, and you didn't think. I don't know. You didn't think that was going to happen frequently. I
Right,
don't
right.
know.
Yeah. Can you
I don't
imagine doing
know.
that now? Hey, congratulations, Kyron. Let's come have a press
Or were
conference.
they or were they celebrating that Jimmy Clausen was gone? Is that
No, Jimmy
oh
Clausen, Golden Tate, and Brian Kelly would have had a different season than
oh
Dave
man, no doubt
Christ.
about that.
And
No
yeah,
no doubt
that
about
would,
that.
those are the answers though, right? Oh, 96, oh
That
nine, and
that's what
21.
comes. Yeah,
Oh 06 was interesting, but I mean,
yeah.
16 was interesting, but not really. All right, final one, long podcast. And we have to say this, Jack Freeman not said. ND Dan 106. During the summer, you all seem to agree that a minimum of 10-2 while making the playoffs would be the barometer to measure a successful season. He is not wrong. We all said that. With the way the year ended, do you consider the season a success? And if not a success, does it have to be considered a failure? I like ND Dan's ability to craft a question.
Yeah, that's well crafted. Um, I mean, I can't say it's a failure because it was incomplete because they were denied an opportunity that they deserved. So I can only say, well, I mean, I guess if I say it's incomplete, then that's a failure. I don't know. Indy Dan 106 really did a great job of phrasing this because I don't know that I can come up with a right answer for that.
Is that the Indy Dan that is a regular questioner,
Yes.
Tio?
Yes.
I
Yep.
can't,
Yeah.
good jerk. I think, yeah, I mean, for asking such a damn good question,
Yep.
and painting us into a corner very artfully. So he should change his screen name to Picasso Dan. I think that I would say you do. I consider it a step back season because you're not still playing. You're not in the 12 team playoff. You have the guy you've called all year long and accurately called all year long, the best player in college football, headed to New York this weekend as your first Heisman Trophy finalist in 13 years. And he's not going to be there talking about Notre Dame going into the playoffs. So it has to be a bit of a step back year because of what was set last year, what was expected this year. And while there was going to be some growing pains this year, always with breaking in a new quarterback and a new defensive coordinator and all of that, you still have had some of the best players of the Marcus Freeman era and some of the best players of the last 10 to 15 years in the Notre Dame program.
I think the season will be looked back upon as a tipping point because I do believe when they embrace the villain thing, I don't know if they're going to embrace the villain in the offseason, but I do believe that there will be some moments in the 2026 football season when Notre Dame's in control of a game and there's some Jimmy Johnson going on. They're gonna. I don't think the ACC, if they're not doing well in a game against Notre Dame, is going to get a whole lot of Steve Sark. Remember, Steve Sarkisian took it easy on Notre Dame. Marcus Freeman's not
Yeah.
taking it easy on a single ACC opponent or any other opponent next year that he's able of taking it out on. I think it's a tipping point season. It's not a success, but it doesn't mean it has to be a failure. He didn't say choose one. He said it doesn't have to be. It's not a success, though. It wasn't a success to not make the playoff and not play in a bowl game if you're Notre Dame with this much talent and coaching talent and ability.
Yeah, I wouldn't call it a failure, but I would say it's not a success.
It's not a success. I
Can
do
we
think it's a
say it
tipping
that way?
point. Step back is a great point, JB, but hopefully that step back is a tipping point for a major step forward. Um, that's
Yeah, and I will say I think that even if Notre Dame's getting beat up a little bit about it, we're hearing more and more now that suddenly there's a greater sense of urgency to get to 16 by next year. So
yeah.
um, I know I know the discussion there inside the Goog has been like this really sucks, but we're going to be change agents because of this. And I would note when you speak about next year's schedule, and I know we've hit it several times. I do want to point out while Notre Dame had to open its season on a Sunday night in the heat and humidity at Miami this year, Miami will be coming to Notre Dame Stadium in November
Yeah.
of 2026. So that's when you hope that it's a cold, snowy November in the Bend like it has been this year.
And as far as embracing the villain, I bristle at that a little bit. I understand what's being said here,
Yep,
and
yep.
and Notre Dame's being painted that way, but I bristle at that because Notre Dame should be nobody's villain. Notre Dame does things the right way. They truly do have. Bavakwa talked about getting pushback about using the term student athlete. It really does exist at Notre Dame. And so anybody that makes Notre Dame the villain, they're the ones with the problem, not Notre Dame.
I would be wildly villainous in the fourth quarter of every game.
Oh, well, you're saying something a little bit different. You
I'm
mean,
talking about during the season next year.
Sure, go for
I
it.
don't care how
I'm
many
not-
brusque handshakes you have. Shake your hand all the way to the second seed. Fist bump, second seed. Let's roll. I mean, I think that it's a tipping point season for Marcus Freeman, and NIL is going to be heightened by this too. And I know some people don't want to talk about that, but NIL. When someone said, "Can they get a guy like Malachi Fields?" Yes, they can get a guy like Malachi Fields at positions because they're going to this year. You can't get left out like this and respond the same way you normally do.
Yep. Yep.
We'll be back Monday. Talk more Notre Dame's Rage Tour for the next 9 months. No, we'll be back on Monday. Talk a little bit about the Heisman Trophy. Army-Navy game, too. There's a student athletes playing a football game. That'll be fun. Until then, for John Bryce of Football Scoop, Tim Priester of Irish Illustrated, I'm Tim O'Malley. Thank you for watching and listening. Irish Illustrated Insider.